Welcome to the N1 Fitness Podcast. I'm your host as always, Marcus Sadu, and today we are chatting about why it's not your fault if you're overweight, but if you want to change it, we're going to cover exactly how to go about that as well. So our ancestors have been around for about 6 million years, and modern humans, or in other words, the humans that we are and look like today, have been around for about 300,000 years. So we've been continuously evolving for a long ass time. Now, everyone knows that priority number one of any species is survival, right? Survival of the fittest. Essentially, don't die. So that urge not to die is literally written into our DNA. So how does a species survive? Procreation and sex. We make babies, and those babies grow up and procreate themselves. They have offspring, and then their offspring do the same, etc., etc., etc. So being that staying alive and procreation are priority number 1 and 2, what dictates whether we can live and procreate or not? Calories. If we don't eat enough, we starve and we die. So we're inherently wired to seek out food, but more specifically, calorically dense foods, because more calories equates to better survival odds. Now, the kicker here is that for centuries and centuries, we had to go out to hunt, kill, and forage for our food, which was really calorically demanding because we'd need to track animals, climb trees, and walk long distances just for a meal. So enter something called the optimal foraging strategy or the optimal foraging theory. So every single animal, including us, behaves in accordance with this model. And fortunately, it's a super easy concept to grasp. Basically, all animals want to obtain the most amount of calories in the least amount of time with the least amount of effort required. So for example, a lion has 2 options. Option number 1 is a small baby gazelle that's a mile away. Or option number 2 is a large, fully grown adult gazelle that's a half mile away. It's a no-brainer, right? The lion is going to pursue the large gazelle because it'll yield more calories while expending less effort in a shorter amount of time. So some of you sticklers might be saying, well, it's going to be harder to kill the adult gazelle, so the risk is higher and this and that. But I'm just illustrating a point here. Why would the lion take more time to go twice as far and burn more calories in order to obtain fewer calories? That makes no sense. So that is optimal foraging theory in a nutshell. Now, we're wired this exact same way. So what's more appealing? Walking to the grocery store or riding your bike to the grocery store? What's more appealing, riding a bike or driving? What's more appealing, driving or getting your food delivered? There are so many examples of this in our daily lives. It's actually really fascinating stuff. A few more examples would be when you have the option of taking the stairs or the elevator, which one are you inherently pulled towards? What about when you're in the elevator and you lean up against the wall inside because it's just easier than standing straight up? These calorie-saving behaviors are so deeply wired into us that we just automatically do them without even thinking about it. Now, how about when you're at the airport and you have the option of walking on regular ground or a moving flat level escalator, right? You have that choice when you come to that sort of apex of both of them. What I'm getting at here is that you're not inherently lazy, you're inherently human. And it takes conscious effort and thought to go contrary to those evolutionary pulls and these survival-based behaviors. So taking this a step further, just recently, say in the last, 30 years more or less, our ability to access food has changed a ton. And that increased food access has trended up along with obesity. Now, it's not just that we have more access to single ingredient whole foods like lean meats, fish, eggs, potatoes, tubers, avocados, nuts, all that good stuff. But we have more access to super calorically dense foods too, like cookies, donuts, pizza, pasta, and burgers. Preferring the taste of burgers over broccoli is totally normal. It makes a lot more sense given the caloric load alone, but also the taste, the smell, and the texture. It's just more appealing. This pull to consume these over-the-top hyper-palatable foods is the same pull that has you want to have sex with people that you're attracted to. It's an extremely strong pull. For example, think about the 5 most attractive people you know or have seen. These could be celebrities or whatever. If you wanted to have sex with them, you wouldn't judge that feeling, I hope not at least, and you wouldn't tell yourself that attraction was wrong because you know that we're animals and we're wired to want, seek out, and have sex, right? From a procreation standpoint for sure, but also just from a place of pure enjoyment. Basically what I'm getting at here is that there's no need to judge yourself because you want and love these high calorie foods, because the same system that wants you to eat pizza wants you to have sex. And good luck trying to push up against the power of essentially natural selection and evolution. It's actually kind of an arrogant viewpoint. It's like swimming upstream against whitewater rapids. It's extremely difficult, and evolution is not working in your favor necessarily in this instance. Now, when it comes to food specifically, our brains are set up to sense 6 nutrients: protein, starch, fat, sugar, salt, and something called umami. An example of umami is soy sauce. MSG is another example, and it's like that meaty-like flavor and texture. Now, single ingredient whole foods like lean meats, fish, eggs, potatoes, and tubers typically contain 1 or 2 of the 6 nutrients our brains are on the lookout for. So lean meat and fish have protein and some salt. Eggs have protein and salt as well. Potatoes contain some starch. Tubers have starch as well. And then avocados contain some fat and a little bit of starch. And then nuts, for example, have predominantly fat in them, a little bit of starch, and a really small amount of protein. Now, what if we take a look at one of the super calorically dense foods and see how many of those 6 nutrients it contains? So let's look at a pepperoni pizza, for example. We've got protein and fat in the cheese and the pepperoni. We've got starch and salt in the crust. We've got sugar and salt in the tomato sauce. We've got the umami flavor in the pepperoni as well. So now all of a sudden we've got every single nutrient that the brain loves in one man-made food. So when we eat pizza, our brains light the fuck up and they tell us, eat more of that because it's got a whole bunch of calories. And remember, calories equate to survival. Pizza is a huge bargain because we can get a whole bunch of calories in just one quote-unquote food. Now, being that the 6 nutrients our brain senses are protein, starch, sugar, fat, salt, and umami, this explains why we don't really naturally gravitate towards vegetables all that much. Our brains can't sense vitamins and minerals. It didn't evolve to do so, likely because all of the foods we had available were essentially nutrient-rich, single-ingredient whole foods back in the day. Also, vegetables are super low in calories, so if our ancestors had the choice between meat or veggies, it's a no contest because the meat has not only a lot more caloric value, but it also contains a lot more nutrients per calorie. You have to eat a shitload of vegetables to get any substantial amount of calories from them. As a side note, if you're having a hard time getting your veggies in, or you're having a tough time getting your kids to consume vegetables, cook them and put some butter and salt on them. It's much more rewarding to the brain because it senses that fat from the butter and then the salt as well. So it not only makes the veggies taste better, but your brain also starts to associate vegetables with 2 of those 6 nutrients that the brain detects and loves, as well as a larger caloric load via the butter. So now we know that we evolved to love a deal, right? The pizza has more of a pull than single ingredient whole foods because it yields a bunch more calories, which lend themselves to better survival odds. Also, if we can expend fewer calories and take less time to obtain that pizza, we will. Understanding this concept will actually help you understand human behavior a lot better in general. So for example, shopping. We love a deal, right? 20, 30, 40, 50% off. We get a serious kick out of getting something that we deem more valuable at a cheaper price. The marketing industry understands our evolutionary and biological triggers very well, and they capitalize on them. And whether you think this is good, bad, neutral, whatever, it is what it is. But getting a foundational understanding of what gets us going will give you a much better insight into human behavior on the whole. So we've established that we're not inherently lazy, right? We're inherently human, and this optimal foraging strategy served us really well for a long time while we evolved in a food scarce environment. Now, we have the same wiring now, but our food environment has changed in a big way. So that mechanism of wanting more calories in less time while putting forth less effort is working against us in a sense. Because now we have fast food on every corner, snack aisles, drive-thrus, essentially just shit tons of calories at our fingertips at any given time. On the movement front, it's the same deal. Movement used to be figured into our day because we had to walk, run, jog, whatever, to find food and essentially do everything that we needed to do to meet our needs. There were no scooters, bikes, and cars back in the day, so we also have to be aware of our inherent pull not to exercise either. If you don't like to exercise, you're not weird, you're completely normal. So how do we manage this evolutionary mismatch, stay lean, healthy, and vibrant in our current environment that sets us up to be overweight and sick? I'm going to break this part down into 4 categories. So nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management, because these are the 4 main buckets in my opinion. I think they're the most important factors when it comes to being a healthy, thriving human. Nutrition. First things first, get all the calorie-dense foods that you find tempting out of your house, because it's not necessarily a matter of if you'll eat them, it's more a matter of when. So set yourself up for success. You're not weak because you find it hard to resist cookies on the counter, chips in the pantry, and ice cream in the freezer, for example. You are wired to love that stuff. And if it's in plain sight, it's even more of a pull because remember, we love a deal, and only needing to walk 10 feet to the kitchen to access literally thousands of calories is a fucking sweet evolutionary bargain. It's like stumbling upon a 400-pound elk out in the wild that can feed you and your entire tribe for a week. It's a jackpot. Actually, speaking of jackpot, the fact that we love a deal literally funds the entire gambling and lotto industry as well. Folks spend tens of thousands of dollars on lotto tickets and the chance that they win a bunch of money without necessarily having to put the work in. Again, this concept spans across all of human behavior. Secondly, fill your fridge, freezer, and pantry with a whole bunch of single and minimal ingredient whole foods because they're super healthy, they're super filling, and they're going to leave you feeling great. Now, high volume, low calorie foods are your friend when it comes to fat loss. So like I mentioned before, plenty of lean meats, fish, eggs, low fat dairy if you digest it well, vegetables, whole fruit, they're all great. You can even do things like get rid of takeout menus, record your TV shows and fast forward through the commercials, unfollow food accounts on Instagram and stuff like this, because all of this falls under your food environment. We are berated with food ads and reminders to eat nonstop throughout the day. And like I said before, these companies understand our tendencies. So if you can make it easier on yourself and reduce the number of reminders to eat, why not, right? Movement. So I get all of my clients to prioritize steps. In my opinion, walking is a baseline must and comes before formal exercise like spinning or lifting weights, for example. 8 to 10,000 steps per day is a really nice number to hit. And if you pair up your steps with tasks like going to the bank, getting groceries, meeting friends for coffee, it really helps with motivation, I find, because you're not just walking to walk, but you're walking with a purpose. Also, listening to music, podcasts, or making phone calls while you're on the move is a great way to go too. So start with getting your steps in, and then once you've really dialed that in, made it habitual, and you want to add more movement into your day, look into something like weight training, an exercise class, spin, whatever you enjoy. On the sleep front, I've done a whole bunch of podcasts on the topic of sleep, and I can't emphasize its importance enough. Getting 7 to 9 hours of consistent quality sleep will change your life. There's no area of the body that goes untouched for the better or worse when it comes to sleep. Basically, everyone is just a better version of themselves when they're well slept versus cranky, tired, and underslept. Also, the research is super clear that we consume about 200 to 300 extra calories per day when we don't get enough sleep. So if you want to get leaner and lose weight, prioritizing sleep is an important one. And with the caveat, if you have kids, just do the best you can. It is what it is. Stress management is a huge topic, but what I will say is that buttoning up your nutrition, movement, and sleep is going to have you handle stressors and whatever comes up in your life so much easier. Eating a poor diet, not moving enough, and undersleeping are all massive stressors in themselves. So if you can dial in those 3 areas, you actually might not even need to focus on specific stress management strategies all that much on their own. For example, getting your 8 to 10K steps in daily is an enormous stress reduction tool. Same goes for getting your 7 to 9 hours of sleep and eating a bunch of single and minimal ingredient whole foods. I actually remember a few years back, I was talking with a personal trainer that only did personal training sessions with folks and not nutritional coaching. And he said to me regarding folks who were overweight, he's like, I don't get it. It's simple, like just eat less and move more. And while this super popular just eat less and move more concept isn't technically false information, it's super unhelpful. And I think that it lacks the understanding that we're actually wired to eat more and move less. If it were that simple, this podcast wouldn't exist, personal training wouldn't exist, nutritional coaching wouldn't exist. We're all going up against some incredibly powerful evolutionary systems that have been in place for millions of years. So no, it's not your fault. But now, what are you going to do about it? Because if the answer is nothing, then unfortunately, that inherent wiring is going to lead you down the path of being overweight and sick, unfortunately, given our new societal circumstances. This actually isn't stuff that our ancestors had to worry about because food access wasn't what it is today, and we had tons of movement inherently built into our day. Also, our sleep schedules were regulated by the sun. Electricity is rather new. You didn't have the option of staying up all night on your computer or watching Netflix. So relatively speaking, this is a really new problem that we have as a species. So essentially, be patient with yourselves. That's a really important point. Now, if you guys find this type of information interesting around how we evolved to eat, move, sleep, etc., check out the book The Hungry Brain by Stephan Guyenet. It is incredible. If you'd rather listen than read, check out podcast episode number 5 because Stephan and I delve into the concepts in the book and how to go about setting yourself up for success. Also, Wired to Eat by Rob Wolf is an awesome read that outlines this stuff too. Rob's incredible. I love his work and I can't recommend following him enough. If you're interested in personalized one-on-one nutritional coaching or workout programming, you can check out the website at n1fitness.com/coaching, which is linked below in the show notes. You can also follow me on Instagram at n1fitness and feel free to friend me up at Marcus Sadu on Facebook as well. I hope you found this episode useful, guys. Thanks so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya!